It started on a quiet night in Lagos. The kind of night where the streets were mostly empty, and the yellow glow of street lamps stretched long shadows across cracked pavement. People passed through the market district quickly, trying to reach home before midnight. But standing beneath one of those street lights was a man nobody paid much attention to. He wore a dark hoodie. His face stayed hidden beneath the shadow of the hood. And around his neck hung an old professional camera. At first glance, he looked like just another street photographer. In cities like Lagos, photographers often wandered at night capturing the raw life of the streets. But this man was different. He didn't talk to anyone. He didn't ask for permission. He simply waited. Watching. Observing. And when the right moment came, he took a picture. Flash. The light burst across the street for only a second. Then darkness returned. The first person who noticed him was a young woman named Amora. She was walking home after finishing her shift at a small restaurant. Her shoes clicked softly against the pavement as she passed under the streetlight. That's when she saw him. The photographer. Standing perfectly still. His camera pointed directly at her. For a moment she hesitated. "Excuse me," she said. The man didn't respond. Instead, flash. The camera exploded with light. Amara flinched. "What the hell was that for?" she asked, irritated. But the photographer simply lowered the camera slowly. He said nothing. Not a single word. Something about him felt wrong. Unnatural. Amora shook her head and kept walking. But as she passed him, she felt something strange. A sudden coldness. Like the air had dropped 10 degrees. She rubbed her arms. And for a split second, she thought she saw something behind her in the reflection of a shop window. A faint glowing shape. Floating. But when she turned around, nothing was there. The photographer was already walking away into the darkness. That night, Amara tried to forget the encounter. But the next morning, she never woke up. Police later said it was heart failure. A perfectly healthy 27-year-old woman. Dead in her sleep. No warning. No explanation. No sign of illness. Just sudden death. Most people called it a tragic mystery. But one person saw something much stranger. Because the next evening, a small photo appeared online. Posted anonymously. It was Amara. Standing under a streetlight. Looking directly at the camera. But the terrifying part wasn't her expression. It was what appeared behind her. A faint glowing figure. Rising from her body. Like a ghost. Like a soul. And in the corner of the photograph was a signature. Just 2 letters. Ike. No one knew what it meant. But over the next few weeks, more photographs began appearing online. More people. More glowing figures. And one terrifying pattern. Every single person in those photos was already dead. At first, people believed the photographs were fake. Just another creepy internet story. A digital hoax. After all, social media was full of edited images and fake ghost sightings. It wasn't unusual for someone to create disturbing photos just to get attention. But one person didn't believe it was fake. Her name was Lina Okoye. Lina was a freelance journalist who specialized in strange and unexplained stories. She had built a reputation online for investigating urban legends across Nigeria. Ghost houses. Haunted forest. Disappearing people. But this one felt different. The first photo Lina saw was the image of Amora, the young woman who had died suddenly in her sleep. The photograph showed Amora standing beneath a streetlight at night. Her eyes wide. Her expression slightly confused. But behind her, something unnatural floated in the air. A glowing, translucent figure. It looked like a human silhouette. Like a soul rising out of her body. Lina zoomed in. The glowing shape wasn't random. It matched Amora's exact posture. Her exact outline. It looked like her spirit. Lina's stomach tightened. That's when she noticed something even stranger. The photo had been uploaded 6 hours before Amora died. She checked again. Then again. The timestamps were real. That meant the photograph had captured something impossible. A moment that hadn't happened yet. Lina quickly began searching for the account that posted it. The username was strange. Just 2 letters. Ike. There was no profile picture. No personal information. Only photographs. And when Lina scrolled through them, her blood ran cold. There were 8 photographs posted in the last month. Each one showed a different person. Different street locations. Different nights. But every photo had the same disturbing detail. A faint glowing figure leaving the person's body. And every single person in those photos was now dead. Car accident. Heart failure. Sudden collapse. Unexplained stroke. The causes were always different. But the timing was identical. Each person had died within 24 hours after their photo was taken. Lina leaned back slowly in her chair. Her mind racing. This can't be real, she whispered. But the evidence sat right in front of her. If these photos were real, then someone out there was taking pictures of people right before they died. Or worse, the camera itself was somehow connected to their deaths. Lina knew there was only one way to find out. She needed to find the photographer. She downloaded every photo and began analyzing them. Street signs. Building numbers. Storefront reflections. Small clues hidden in the background. And after hours of searching, she discovered something chilling. Every photograph had been taken within the same 3 streets in the city. A small, quiet district known as Makoro Alley. A place most people avoided after dark. Old buildings. Broken street lights. Too many stories of robberies and disappearances. Lina stared at the photos again. Then she grabbed her jacket, her camera, and her recorder. If someone was really capturing people's dying souls, then tonight, she was going to meet him. Makoro Alley looked even darker than Lina expected. The narrow street stretched between old buildings whose walls were cracked and stained by years of rain and neglect. A few weak street lamps flickered above, barely lighting the path. Most shops were already closed. Metal shutters covered the windows. The silence felt heavy. Lina stood at the entrance of the alley, holding her camera tightly. Her phone screen still displayed the photographs she had studied all afternoon. Every single one had been taken here. This is where he hunts, she whispered to herself. A cold breeze moved through the street. Somewhere far away, a dog barked. Lina slowly began walking deeper into the alley. Her footsteps echoed softly against the pavement. She kept scanning the shadows. Watching. Waiting. 10 minutes passed. Nothing. Just silence. Lina began to wonder if she had come too late. Maybe the mysterious photographer had already moved to another part of the city. Maybe she had chased a ghost story after all. Then suddenly. Flash. A bright burst of light exploded somewhere ahead. Lina froze. Her heart jumped. Someone had just taken a photograph. And it came from the far end of the alley. She quickly turned off her phone screen and moved forward carefully. Step by step. The deeper she walked, the darker the alley became. And then she saw him. Standing beneath a single flickering streetlight. The photographer. Just like in the photos. A tall man wearing a dark hoodie. His face hidden by shadows. The camera hanging from his neck. He stood completely still. Almost like a statue. In front of him stood a young man in a delivery uniform. The delivery worker looked confused. "Hey, why are you taking my picture?" the man asked nervously. The photographer didn't answer. Instead, he slowly raised the camera. The delivery man shifted uncomfortably. "Look, man, I'm not interested in photos," he said. Flash. The camera fired. The white light briefly illuminated the entire alley. For a split second, Lina saw something that made her stomach twist. Behind the delivery man, a glowing shape appeared. A faint transparent figure slowly rising upward. Like a human silhouette made of light. Then the flash faded. Darkness returned. The delivery man blinked. "What the hell was that?" he muttered. The photographer lowered the camera calmly. Still silent. Then he turned and began walking away. Just like that. As if nothing had happened. The delivery man shook his head and walked in the opposite direction, muttering angrily to himself. But Lina remained frozen in place. Her hands were shaking. Because she had seen it with her own eyes. The same thing from the photographs. The glowing figure. The rising soul. And suddenly she understood something terrifying. Those photos weren't edited. They weren't fake. They were real. Which meant the delivery man who had just been photographed was going to die. Within the next 24 hours. Lina's mind raced. She needed proof. She needed to stop the photographer before someone else died. Without thinking, she followed him. The hooded man walked slowly through the dark streets as if he knew exactly where he was going. Lina kept her distance. But just as she turned the next corner, the photographer suddenly stopped. Then slowly, he turned around. And for the first time, Lina saw his eyes. They weren't normal. They glowed faintly in the darkness. And his voice was calm. Almost amused. "I was wondering when someone would start following me." Lina's blood ran cold. Because somehow, he already knew she was there. Lina's heart pounded as the hooded photographer stared directly at her. For a moment, neither of them moved. The alley felt colder. Quieter. Like the world itself was holding its breath. "You shouldn't be here," the photographer finally said. His voice was calm, almost tired. Lina forced herself to speak. "Those people, the ones in your photographs," she said. "They all died." The man didn't react. Instead, he slowly lifted his camera. The metal body looked old. Very old. Scratched. Worn. "This camera doesn't kill anyone," he said softly. Lina narrowed her eyes. "Then explain the souls in your photos." The photographer stared at the lens of the camera as if it were something alive. "Because this camera doesn't capture faces," he whispered. "It captures death." Lina felt a chill run down her spine. "What does that mean?" The man hesitated for a moment. Then he spoke again. "Years ago, I bought this camera from an antique shop outside the city. At first it worked like any normal camera. But then something strange started happening." He turned the camera slightly so Lina could see the screen. a photograph appeared. The same delivery worker from earlier. Behind him, the glowing silhouette. The camera shows me the exact moment a person's soul begins to leave their body. Lina's breathing slowed. So you're saying, these people were already going to die? The photographer nodded slowly. I don't cause their deaths. I simply capture the moment when death chooses them. Lina stared at the screen again. The glowing figure looked exactly like the ones from the other photos. But then she noticed something strange. Wait, she said. The photo timestamp, it's tomorrow. The photographer looked up slowly. Yes. Lina's stomach tightened. Tomorrow, she whispered. That means. That man will die tomorrow night, the photographer finished. Lina stepped back. Her mind spinning. If the camera could predict death, then every photo it took was like a countdown. A warning. But the photographer's expression darkened. There's one more thing, he said quietly. Lina looked up. What? The photographer's voice dropped to a whisper. Once the camera captures a soul, there is no way to stop what happens next. Lina refused to believe it. There has to be a way, she said. People can't just be doomed because of a photograph. The photographer sighed. I thought the same thing. His eyes looked haunted. 3 years ago, I tried to stop it. He pulled another photograph from his coat pocket. It showed a young woman smiling at the camera. Her name was Nia, he said quietly. My sister. Lina felt her chest tighten. I photographed her by accident. Just a normal family picture. But when I looked at the image later. He paused. Behind Nia in the photograph was the same glowing shape. Her soul rising. I panicked, he continued. I tried everything. I took her to the hospital. I kept her home. I stayed awake all night watching her. But the next evening, his voice cracked. She collapsed. Heart failure. Lina stared at the photograph in silence. That's when I realized the truth, he whispered. The camera doesn't cause death. It reveals fate. Lina shook her head slowly. But why keep taking pictures then? The photographer's face darkened. Because if I don't, someone else will. Lina frowned. What do you mean? The photographer stepped closer. There's another rule. When someone becomes the owner of the camera, they must continue photographing death. Or the camera will choose them. Lina felt her stomach drop. What? The man's eyes were hollow. I tried to destroy it. I smashed it. I burned it. I threw it into the ocean. But every time, it returned. He lifted the camera slowly. And every time I tried to stop using it, the lens turned toward me. Lina stared at him. You mean, it tried to photograph you? The photographer nodded. If that photo is taken, my soul will appear in the image. And that means my death has been chosen. Lina whispered quietly. So you keep using it to survive? Yes. But tonight, the photographer said softly. Something changed. Lina felt a sudden chill. What? The photographer slowly raised the camera and pointed it directly at her. Lina froze. Her heart pounded violently in her chest. You're joking, she said nervously. The photographer didn't smile. I didn't choose this, he said quietly. The camera did. He turned the screen toward her. The photo had already been taken. And there it was. Lina's face. Her shocked expression frozen in the frame. Behind her, a glowing silhouette. Her soul. leaving her body. Her knees weakened. "No," she whispered. "This isn't real." The photographer's voice was almost sympathetic. "You have less than 24 hours. Lina felt panic rising inside her. There must be a way to stop it. The photographer shook his head slowly. "I searched for years. There isn't." Lina stared at the photograph. Lina couldn't stop staring at the photograph. Her own face looked back at her from the small glowing screen of the camera. Eyes wide. Frozen in shock. And behind her, the faint outline of a glowing human shape slowly rising from her body. Her soul. The alley suddenly felt smaller. The air colder. "You're lying," Lina whispered, her voice trembling. The photographer didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slowly lowered the camera and stepped back into the shadow of the streetlight. "I wish I was," he finally said. Lina's mind raced. 24 hours. That was all the time she had left. Every other person in those photos had died within a day. Car accidents. Heart failure. Sudden collapse. Different deaths. Same ending. "No," Lina muttered, shaking her head. "There has to be a way to stop this." The photographer watched her quietly. "There isn't." "But fate isn't real," Lina snapped. "People choose their lives." For the first time, the photographer's expression changed. Not anger. Not fear. Just sadness. "I used to believe that too," he said. Lina clenched her fist. "If the camera predicts death," she said, "then destroy it." The photographer gave a weak smile. "I tried." He held up the camera. "It always comes back." Lina stared at it. The old metal body. The cracked lens. Something about it felt wrong. Almost alive. And suddenly an idea appeared in her mind. "What if the camera doesn't belong to you anymore?" she asked. The photographer frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Lina slowly stepped forward. "If someone else becomes the owner, the curse moves to them." The photographer's eyes widened. "You don't understand." But Lina was already moving. In one quick motion, she grabbed the camera from his hands. For a split second, neither of them spoke. The camera felt heavy. Cold. Almost vibrating in her grip. The photographer stared at her in horror. "You shouldn't have done that," he whispered. But Lina wasn't listening. Her heart pounded as she looked down at the screen. The image of her own photograph was still there. Her glowing soul rising behind her. But then, something strange happened. The image flickered. The glowing silhouette behind her body began to fade. Slowly disappearing. The photographer's eyes widened. "That's impossible," he murmured. The soul in the image vanished completely. Lina looked up slowly. Her breathing uneven. "What does that mean?" she asked. The photographer stared at the camera screen in disbelief. "It means," he whispered, "the camera chose a new owner." Silence filled the alley. Lina looked down at the camera again. For a moment, nothing happened. Then suddenly, click. The camera shutter activated by itself. Lina's heart skipped a beat. A new photograph appeared on the screen. But this time, the person in the photo wasn't Lina. It was the photographer. Standing beneath the streetlight. His face pale. And behind him, a glowing soul rising from his body. The photographer slowly sank against the wall. His voice barely a whisper. "I told you. Death can't be stopped." Lina stared at the image. Her hands trembling. The glowing figure behind him grew brighter on the screen. And for the first time, she understood the terrible truth. The camera didn't predict death. It shows it. And now, the cassette camera belonged to her. The photographer looked up one last time. A faint, tired smile on his face. "Take care of it," he said. Then his eyes closed. The alley became silent. Lina stood alone beneath the streetlight, holding the camera. The cold wind moved through the empty street. And somewhere in the darkness, a faint whisper seemed to echo, waiting for the next photograph. Lina walked away from Makoro Alley that night, the cassette camera heavy in her hands. She didn't know how many souls it had already taken, or how many it would take next. But one thing was certain. Somewhere in the city, someone's last photograph was waiting to be taken. If you enjoyed this dark mystery story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more chilling tales.